who rules. Um, Welcome to the Mayor's Commission for Citizens with Disabilities for the City of Omaha. I probably butchered that, but we've been talking a lot, so it's like, what was I going to say? In any case, this is our monthly commission meeting. Um, I want to remind you that we have rebroadcasts of our meeting on Channel 22 at 5 p.m. on Monday, which I believe is correct. But that also, if there's something in the meeting that you wanted to go back and check on, they're also on our YouTube channel on the mayor's website at www.cityofomaha.org. Click on the mayor's office, click on the Disabilities Commission, and that will get you probably as close as I can get you. Um, Very quickly, just a little bit about our commission. Um, we work to promote the quality of life, accessibility, and equity in all aspects related to the city on behalf of and in cooperation with the citizens of Omaha who experience disabilities. To this end, we advise the mayor, the city council, city departments, heads, and other City of Omaha personnel on issues of access, representation, employment, housing, quality of life affecting people with disabilities and their families in the city. We try to serve as a resource for Omaha citizens with disabilities and their families in terms of taking their concerns forward and trying to achieve some resolutions. We work to publicize to citizens the role of the commission, the resources available to assist them, as well as employers, housing representatives, business owners, engineers, architects, others who have a role in bettering the life of Omaha citizens. We work to promote awareness for the general public on the capabilities, needs, and desires of people with disabilities. We try and publicly recognize businesses, schools, employers on periodically who've demonstrated outstanding support for people with disabilities. We serve to advocate for accessibility and implement plans and projects to improve services for citizens with disabilities, and we review and implement plans and projects for advocating for people with disabilities. We review stuff, as I think is what I'm trying to say. Um, and so that's a little bit about our commission. Uh, I need to comment at this point that we have 10 members, 4 present, so we did not have a quorum today, so we bypassed um, uh, approving minutes and approving agendas, but we did have a great planning meeting beforehand, which I'll talk more about as we go forward. But at this juncture, I'd like to have our members take a moment to that they're here on the commission to represent in terms of disabilities and the city. So can I turn to you, Nat, or you?
Sure. I'm
Okay.
Natalie Simmons, and I'm a grant writer with Guided Eye Writing Services, and I'm on the commission as a mental health advocate. And this is my second term on the commission. I was here from 2017, 18, and 19, and then just started back a few meetings ago.
Thanks, Natalie.
Uh-huh.
I did inform Natalie that she may be drafted into the role of secretary. We'll see. I think that's highly likely. Megan?
Megan Walls, and I sit as the vice chair on the commission. I work in disability, inclusion, and accessibility, and I am here to represent kind of the voice of a disability across the spectrum of age and category.
Thanks, Megan. Ashley?
Yes, my name is Ashley Wolf, and I work for the Nebraska Commission for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing, and I'm representing statewide individuals that are deaf and hard of hearing, that community.
Thank you, Ashley. And our folks online, can we start with Nina? if you're able to talk, Nina, I wasn't sure if you're driving. So,
Yeah, I'm actually driving. So I'm Nina. I run the Jansen's Foundation. I'm a rare disease patient. I also have a disability which is physical, and I use a wheelchair. Thank you.
thanks, Nina. Be safe, irrespective of introductions. Daryl?
Yeah, I'm Daryl Kachera, and the founder of MS Forward, the MS Forward Center, I guess, out here in Millard. And we work with individuals to improve their physical, emotional, mental stability through activity. And I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis 22 years ago myself. So I certainly have a profound interest in everything that's going on here with this committee.
Thank you, Daryl. Um, Jim?
Yeah, my name's Jim Clement. I work as executive director of Project Houseworks, which is a local nonprofit that does some programming centered around ensuring that people have affordable housing, and just kind of I just got engaged in this committee just more, also as a community member. I have two parents that were both deaf, and then one that eventually became legally blind. So just have experience personally with family members and having accessibility in a variety of ways. So just really kind of involved, just based on personal experience, and then just being a member of the community, trying to contribute to this group however I can.
Thank you, Jim. And Andre?
Hello, my name is Andre Partridge. I am a recent graduate from the University of Nebraska in Omaha. I'm also born with autism, and I'm here on my first term at the commission as the representative for autistic peoples around Omaha, and I'm also very glad to be here.
Thanks, Andre. And I should mention I'm Mark Smith. Uh, I work at the Monroe Meyer Institute at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I'm also, and primarily, I'm the parent to and family member of adults with intellectual and developmental disabilities. So, in between my home life and my work life, I just do disability. Uh, I serve as a faculty member there. I just really, it's just a wonderful opportunity to, and it's a wonderful resource to people with intellectual and developmental disabilities in the city as well as the state. Um, just quickly from our uh, earlier discussion, we are looking at having a representative from Front Porch, Meredith Dillon, present in June, and then we will not have a meeting per se in July. We have lots of new members on our commission, which is great news. But we really are just starting to get to know each other. And so we looked at having a planning meeting so that we can kind of be more strategic in terms of the areas and issues that we want to address over this coming year and beyond. So, and we've often done that. We've often, well, a lot of times we haven't had a meeting in July because everybody seems to go on vacation. But we really want to look at what we're doing as a commission in terms of the accessibility of the meetings to our members, the areas of emphasis that the commission takes a look at, and maybe some of the ways we go about really drilling down to address certain concerns. Some of the issues that came up in our pre-meeting in, involved personnel, school personnel, um, disability provider services personnel, and how we're seeing very significant turnover levels. And Nina especially kind of shared some scary things about the availability of um, certain services in the Elkhorn, one of the public school systems in the city. I don't want to hold anybody up as a as an example, because I'm actually quite aware that all of the local districts are experiencing significant turnover. And a lot of that involves special education staff and providers. And so those are a couple of things we talked about, with the idea being that we would want to take a stronger look at those, as well as some of the more common issues that we've looked at over time: transportation, um, employment, housing, and we'll be hearing from uh, Front Porch next month on how the housing issue. So with all of that, um, I want to introduce our presenter for today. And we've met, and I am just blocking on your name. And of course, your name badge is turned the other way.
Yeah, Laura Aite.
Laura, welcome. Laura's going to talk about some of her activities within the Omaha Human Rights and Relations Department. Um, I had the pleasure of meeting Laura when we did an interview on KPAO, which also televises these meetings. So it's a pleasure to see you.
Yes, you too. Thank you.
You bet.
Thanks for having me. So, like Mark said, I work in the Omaha Human Rights and Relations Department for the city of Omaha. I'm an investigator, and I work with Kat. And so I'm just going to be talking kind of about what we do in the division that I work in, which is the Civil Rights Investigations and Enforcement. Our department actually we technically have 4 divisions, so that's just one of them. And so in my division, we take complaints of discrimination in housing, employment, and places of public accommodation, and then we do an investigation as to whether or not the anti-discrimination law was broken. So there's a couple different laws that we enforce. We have the City of Omaha Ordinance. So there's under Chapter 13 of the Omaha Ordinance, that's the anti-discrimination ordinance, and that prohibits discrimination in housing, employment, and places of public accommodation. That would be kind of like a retail store or a hotel or something like that. And then we also have what we call like a work sharing agreement. It's basically a contract with the federal government. So that's through the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. They enforce the federal anti-discrimination laws in employment. That would be Title VII and the ADA. Also, the Age and Employment Act. And then we also have a contract with HUD, that's Housing and Urban Development. They enforce the federal law related to housing. That's Title VIII of the Civil Rights Act. And so our department, we play a neutral role since we're a government entity. When we receive a complaint, we do a thorough investigation. And then, usually it's dual filed under both the ordinance and the federal law. So after our investigation is done, based on the evidence that we gather, we determine if there's been a violation of one of those laws. We do try to mediate or conciliate the complaints. It's not required, but we do try to do that just to try to bring a resolution to the complainants. And if you look under ordinance, it kind of depends on the outcome of the investigation. There's different options, but in employment, if there is so an outcome of an investigation would be reasonable cause or no reasonable cause, right? If it's no reasonable cause, then we close the case and we don't take any further action. But if someone wants to file their case in court, they always can. In housing, if it is reasonable cause, there's been times where the city has filed a lawsuit in court. Or we also just recently reestablished the Civil Rights Hearing Board. It's kind of a step between us and going to court. So a complainant could elect to have their case heard through the Civil Rights Hearing Board. That's made up of 3 members of our HR&R board. So that's just kind of an overview of how that works. We also do a lot of training and outreach. Our goal is to not just take complaints and investigate them, but also try to prevent discrimination, remedy discrimination. So we do a lot of that as well. Some people or audiences that we have are like landlord groups. We do a quarterly fair housing training that anyone can attend. It's open to the public. Sometimes we partner with like nonprofits just to get information out, not just to a landlord, but also to complainants or the people that are possibly experiencing the housing discrimination. And one thing I think was interesting that I wanted to mention is that in housing, we actually, so when someone files a discrimination complaint, they file it on a protected class. You allege that you're discriminated against because of a protected class. And in housing, the most commonly filed complaint is on disability. And we often see that related to like we say alleged because we don't know, alleged denial of a reasonable accommodation in housing. So that's probably the most frequent issue that we see in housing related to disability. We see less accessibility than we do accommodation issues. And then in employment, I would say we still do get quite a few disability complaints, reasonable accommodation denials, and then it's a little bit more broad with employment because there's more issues that it could fall under. So that's probably just a kind of a brief overview of what we do. But I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Laura?
I'd be interested.
Yes, I do have one. This is Ashley. You made the comment about the board, the Civil Rights Board, and those members. Wanting to know who are those board members?
So they're the Human Rights and Relations Department. We have a board, and they're appointed by the mayor. I believe CAT are 9 members. Yeah, there's currently 9 members. Quite a few of them are new, actually, and I don't work directly with them, so I don't know all of their names. I do know the chair, Scott Hahn, right, Kat? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah, so there's 9 members, and then 3 are on the Civil Rights Hearing Board. If someone does elect to have their case heard at the Civil Rights Hearing Board, then that board will hire it's like an attorney that's appointed by the court to kind of oversee this hearing. And then it's been in our ordinance for a while. It just hadn't been set up, so it's kind of fairly new to us again.
Okay, I was just wondering because wanting to know if there's full access. If from my understanding, there's different categories of hearings. So are they aware of different disabilities? Like are they aware of people who are deaf and hard of hearing and their issues? Just wondering if they're familiar with those board members.
You know, that's a good question. I know that they work on all they have like kind of subcommittees, I think, that work on different areas since we we reach out to all different like marginalized communities in Omaha. But we could probably get you like the name for a contact for the HR&R board if you'd like to find out some more or like to talk to them more about that. I know that they do have sometimes have people come and do presentations for their board meetings as well. They meet once a month.
Yeah, we had Scott at our meeting back in January.
Yes.
He attended, and he really expressed an interest in at least having an ongoing dialogue with us. So I think reaching out to Scott, I'm sure he would welcome the opportunity to share information.
I can hop in here for a second. The 3 members of the board that are the Civil Rights Hearing Board are Dr. Jamar Dorsey, John Fox, and Mynesha Spencer. Andrea Macias is the alternate in case one of them is not available. And that board has previously collaborated with this board on some initiatives, and they are always willing to collaborate. So, and if anybody wants to speak with that board, reach out to me. I'm their liaison as well. And I can connect you.
This is Nina. I had a question. So, thank you for all the work you're doing. I think it's really important. And I did wonder, um, oftentimes we will see people with disabilities sort of struggle in their employment um, because they don't have like so they weren't terminated, or they weren't actually there wasn't a very overt form of dismissal per se, yet there would be several things that would happen, and this people with disabilities kind of just take it because we are used to just sort of worrying about, well, are we going to get another job in some other place? So we might as well, and is it going to be worse there? So what do you like? How do we get the information out to people with disabilities that are in working spaces that are not very favorable to, allowing them to grow or have more opportunities or anything else, just really discriminating, but in a very subtle way? I wonder if you could speak to what kind of lifelines are out there for them, or how we can create awareness to help them.
Sure. Um, so every employer is supposed to have a notice if they have a certain number of employees. I think it's like 15 or more employees. You have to have a notice posted about the EEO laws somewhere. So, I mean, whether or not they're going to have it or not, but they're supposed to. It's the law that they're supposed to have that posted. So there's that. The EEOC also has a really good website with a lot of information on it. It's we have to be careful in that we can't give legal advice. So we often direct people to this to their website because it gives some really good information about the ADA, which is the federal law that protects people with disabilities and employment. And then I would say, aside from that, um, we do try to refer people to more of like advocates and nonprofits that help people with employment. But I know that the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Commission is one. It seems like there's maybe more for housing advocate wise than there is for employment. Now that you point that out, and since we're a neutral entity, we don't serve as an advocate. So, for example, in housing, there's the Fair Housing Center of Nebraska and Iowa, and they often will like maybe request a reasonable accommodation for someone with a disability to their housing provider. They kind of help them, walk them through that process. They can if they represent them. I don't know that there is any place like that necessarily related to employment. Um, but we always try to do as much outreach as we can. I would say perhaps that's an opportunity maybe for the board to collaborate, because I know that's one responsibility for the board is to reach out to different communities in Omaha and try to stop and prevent discrimination.
So one of the kind of the questions that I had written down was in that same thread, like how do community members learn about these different options, in general? So whether that's in a public space or in housing, because you mentioned outreach and you mentioned like the landlord groups and like, but how do the everyday citizen learn about what their options are and what these programs are?
Yeah, so it's I would say from the complaints that we get, most people find out about it through maybe they're like if they file a complaint in HR first with their human resources department. they're usually notified about the EEOC process, or maybe they've gone through it before. Perhaps they've seen some sort of like advertisement or um, public, like our public access TV show. Um, but yeah, I mean, in terms of specifically, I don't have the numbers in terms of like the complaints that we get, how they find out about us. Sometimes it's a referral. Most of the time, it's this that they've somehow heard about the EEOC, right? I mean, I think most people know about the EEOC and then have been directed to us through that way. Just when if it's related to a disability and employment.
Okay, so that makes sense. If it's, let's say, thinking housing related, because my second question was related to housing, but if you have someone who, say, has been in a refugee, process, and English isn't their first language, they don't know necessarily all of the structures, and they're facing discrimination, housing wise, or like, is it the refugee resettlement center? Like, where are they turning to get these pieces of information? That part of maybe the collaboration is making sure that all of this information hits those channels that people may be turning to.
Yeah, well, we try to reach out to lots of different organizations. So, for example, like Legal Aid of Nebraska, the Tenant Assistance Project, the Refugee Task Force. I know our director sits on a lot of different boards and agencies to try to just like get our name out there. That way we can be a referral for people if they do have an issue. Um, but in terms of the refugee community, there's a couple of different. I mean, there's several different nonprofits that work with refugees that we receive that might refer them to us through them.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I was hoping, because it's come up in a couple of different meetings and conversations with different presenters, so I was hoping we could dig into the housing aspect. And you mentioned that the most common complaint that you receive is individuals who are being denied a reasonable accommodation. That comes up a lot. Ashley has some really good examples, so I might let her kind of share some of what she shared before. But how are those handled? How are landlords provided education or resources, and how is that an area that maybe there's something in that work that we're doing that can help with the understanding of what those look like, or the importance of them, or just something like that.
Yeah, I think that's a good question. Um, so I would say, when it comes to landlords, you got, your really big companies in Omaha, right? Like your big property management companies, like there's the Lund Company, and they manage a ton of properties. And then you have your like medium landlords, and you have your really small landlords that maybe just have like a couple properties. And so usually what we see is when you have a bigger company, they're more aware of the Fair Housing Act. That's a law that they have to follow. Sometimes they have mandatory training for their employees and their property managers, fair housing training. But I think the issue that we see arises when it's more of a smaller, medium landlord. They actually sometimes don't even know about the Fair Housing Act. Like they don't even know that it's a law that they have to follow. And so they don't know what a reasonable accommodation is. Maybe they do know what a reasonable accommodation is, but they don't know what the rules are. They don't know when there's, because, and they might not have an attorney to advise them and things like that. And so I think that's where the issues mostly lie, is not necessarily like always they don't want to grant an accommodation, but it's like lack of knowledge and understanding about the law, right? And so I would say probably the best way to reach out is to maybe work with local landlord groups, um, or outreach in that way. It's hard though, because I mean, not everyone is part of a landlord group. Anyone can just own properties and rent them out. You know what I mean? But that is something that we always address though. So if we have let's say we conciliate or mediate a complaint, we always try to include some sort of training component in there for the landlord. And so that's really helpful. And I think I think that is helpful for smaller landlords who maybe just haven't had the opportunity to learn what their responsibilities are.
So when you said you would do kind of some of those educational awareness things to landlord groups, is that all through a particular organization or channel? Is it something that you all set up or that you go in and do because they set it up?
Usually they set it up. Yeah.
Okay.
So unless we mandate the training in our settlement agreements, then usually it's a landlord group that contacts us to set it up.
Laura, one of the things I have dealt with over the years, in terms of some of the services I've been involved with, has been also related to housing, and that is when people with disabilities want to locate in a particular neighborhood, and then we run into a real NIMBY, not in my backyard environment. We have neighborhood groups coming to protest, and is that something that falls within your area of concern?
So yes, actually, if you're, are you referring to maybe like a home,
Yeah,
like a group home type setting?
Three adult people living in the same house. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So actually, so prior to working for the city, I worked for the Nebraska Equal Opportunity Commission. That's basically the state version of us, right? So they enforce the state law, and they have jurisdiction statewide, whereas our jurisdiction is only within the city limits of Omaha, and so that would possibly fall under like a zoning violation, right? If they're denied some sort of like zoning access to build a home or to live in a home. So that I would say in situations like that, you could either call us, and if it's not something that we would have jurisdiction under, then we could refer it over to the Nebraska Equal Opportunity Commission. But I have had a case like that over there. It was not in Omaha. It was in a different smaller town where it was actually a person who wanted to was starting a nonprofit, and part of that nonprofit was homes for people with disabilities, and they wouldn't give him the permits necessary to start these homes, and it was based on disability. So yes, it's possible I could fall under that. And then of course, in general, the Fair Housing Act also prohibits harassment and just overt discriminatory statements, discriminatory advertising, and stuff like that. So even if it wasn't related to like multiple people living in a home, if it's disability related harassment or discriminatory statements, then that would be prohibited by the Fair Housing Act.
And I guess one other question, and this is pretty broad, but I'll just throw it out there. How can you see this group, now that we're kind of getting up to manpower speed, how can we support or work with you in terms of the efforts that your group is undertaking in the city?
So I know that our department wants to I don't know, but I think our department wants to work on more of an outreach plan for our investigations to try to broaden our reach and see, what other complaints are out there that we're not getting. So I think that might be a good opportunity for us to collaborate with you in terms of doing outreach to both people with disabilities who might need to file a complaint or need information or education about their rights in the law. And if you also are looking to work with or get the information out to landlords, I think both of those would be something that our department could work with you on.
Should have turned that off. Thank you. I think we would welcome some conversations about that.
Okay, great. Well, Kat and I will pass that along to our assistant director. He just started, so. And then, yeah, we can get back to you because I think that y'all kind of brought up some good points that people are maybe just not knowing where to go when they experience these issues, right? So that's
Well, and I think some of it is like knowing when it's an issue that, they experience like a microaggression type of harassment as an
yeah,
example, and you're wondering like, I don't feel very good, and I think that wasn't right, but I'm not too sure.
yeah,
I wonder who I would even talk to about that.
right, yeah,
And because I think can be pretty prevalent at times.
yeah,
I
sure,
think Mark, you're absolutely right. I don't think that everyone in the disability community even knows when there is a transgression and what to do and what are the next steps. And I think an outreach would be fantastic. I mean, just to be able to be a part of the employment onboarding, just to know what your rights are as an employee, especially in some of these organizations that really hire people with disabilities as well as part of, just filling those ticking those boxes, but then not providing the actual support on the job. Those are all things that I feel our community face every day, and we don't even recognize them as issues. I've often talked to, colleagues and others in the community and said, "Hey, this is not right. You need to complain." And I think that they don't even have the agency to do that or know what to do about it.
Thanks, Nina. Good points. Other questions for Laura?
I don't, but I really appreciate all of the information and knowing the channels that you all work with, and especially with us going into a planning meeting in the next couple months, this will be really helpful. So,
yeah,
thank you.
great. Okay, well, thank you all, and it was nice talking to you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Okay. One of the, I really don't have old business to report. We did talk about some of our new business in terms of the discussion of our pre-meeting, that we're looking at having a representative of Front Porch, which is a housing organization locally, talk to us next month about disability housing issues. So kind of on our minds, Laura. So what can I say? But then we're looking at July for a planning meeting, and so that would be that opportunity to look at housing and other issues that we've talked about today. Um, One thing I'd like to do, since we do have some time left available to us, is see if there are any announcements of events that are coming up. I'll turn to my right first, Nat.
I don't have any.
Okay, then I'll turn to my left, because I know that Megan has something.
I usually do have multiple, and
Yes, you do.
I will on Saturday, June 3rd, the Outlook Enrichment Craft Fair is taking place, and you would think I would have put the location in there, so I will look for that really quick. And I think that's my only one, so I'm gonna look for that event.
Okay, Ashley?
Yes, NCDHS will be hosting the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Awareness Day at the Omaha Storm Chasers. And that's June 2nd.
The baseball game on
So
June
you're welcome to come. June 2nd, the Omaha Storm Chasers. We'll have the deaf signer doing the national anthem, and silent inning. And so we'll have the players' names. They'll be signing those. So there's no microphones, no speaking at all, nothing. So for those innings.
Very cool.
Did you say the Storm Chasers?
Storm Chasers.
Okay.
Yeah, Warner Park out on Highway 370.
Yes, Warner Park.
June 2nd. Excellent. Uh, for those still online, Nina, are you in a position to let us know if you have any uh, events coming up you want to report on? I'm guessing that means no.
We give her an extra second. I found the information on the craft fair. So it's the Outlook Enrichment Craft Fair, June 3rd, from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And it is at the Outlook Nebraska building at 4125 South 72nd Street in Omaha. And yeah, so that's all on that.
Cool.
I don't have anything to report.
Thanks, Nina.
Thank
The
you.
extra minute was worth it. So, Andre, any events coming up that you wanted to report on?
Actually, I do have one event that's coming out in June. So it's actually it's connecting the dots, a networking event for autism families of color. It's on June 10th from 10:30 to 12 p.m. at the Learning Community North at 1612 North 24th Street, Omaha, Nebraska. So it's a way to connect with families of color who have been impacted with autism. This event features panel made up of family members, self advocates, and professionals who share their stories and love to learn and stuff. And light snacks will be available. So, like I said, for the check-in is at 10 to 10:30, and the event will end at around 12.
And the date for that again, Andre, just for our folks listening?
Is June 10th.
June 10th. Thank you.
From 10 to 12.
Yeah, 10 to it's 10:30 to 12. Yes.
Where is it?
Learning Community North, 1612 North 24th Street.
Awesome.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
Thank you, Andre.
You're welcome.
I wanted to report on one activity that actually goes on routinely. Every first Thursday, there's a webcast called the Disability Education Series. Um, it basically is open to anyone who has an interest. The topics are usually announced ahead of time, and um, the group that is involved in doing this brings in local and state representatives to talk about a whole variety of different issues related to disability. Um, uh, it's a Zoom call, so uh, the actual location is so long I can't read it because the letters are so small. But I'll try and make sure that if you're interested, the next one is on June 1st. Again, it's from 1 to 2:30 Central, and I'll make sure that the Zoom link for that is available on our website. Sound
What
cool?
day is it?
June 1st.
Thursday?
Uh-huh. It's always the first Thursday from 1 to 2:30
Thank
p.m.
you.
And uh, it's really been pretty cool. We get very good turnouts, and because there just is a real thirst for knowledge and information out there. Um, so it's some of our local leaders really trying to step up and uh, make information about housing, employment, transportation, all the way down to things like the Olmstead Plan for the state of Nebraska, uh, the Americans with Disabilities Act, and some of the issues related to that in terms of what's going on in the city. Uh, it varies, but once you sign into one, they'll keep sending you information. So I'll try and make sure that Zoom link is available if you have an interest. And uh, let's see. So our next meeting is scheduled for June 26th. Um, it'll again be approximately 3:30 to approximately 4:30. Um, I want to thank Jamie, our sign interpreter, for her assistance. And I want to thank Cox Communication for taping and broadcasting the meeting, which will be on, again, on Channel 22, typically at 5 p.m. on Mondays, but it might be broadcast at other times, depending on how much they might have to put out on their channel. Um, Again, if you don't have cable and have an interest in, or for whatever reason you want to take a look at this broadcast again to hear more about any information from the commission or from our presenter, if you go to the mayor's commission website, that's cityofomaha.org, go to the mayor's link and then go to the Disability Commission link. We'll get you to web YouTube reproduction of this meeting. With that, I think we're good to go. Thank you all. Appreciate it. Have a great rest of your week.
Bye, Nina.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Andre and Nina. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye bye.